Mr. TeenScreams. I never thought I'd miss the blistering heat of California until I moved to Elkwood. My mom had gotten a new job, something about research and opportunities. The usual mumbo jumbo. I wasn't really paying attention because, honestly, nothing about leaving San Diego for a small town nestled in the shadow of the Appalachian Mountains sounded appealing. I'd seen pictures, snow covered peaks, endless forests, but that didn't prepare me for the reality of the place. Elkwood was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that made you feel like something was always watching. The air felt thicker here, like it clung to you. And the sky was always a shade of gray, even when the sun was out. My first day of school wasn't any better. The kids were friendly enough, but they had that small town vibe, like they'd known each other since birth and didn't care to include an outsider in their tight knit circles. I was the new kid, the Californian, the one who didn't belong. It wasn't until lunch that I met Liam. He was sitting alone at the edge of the cafeteria, an old hoodie pulled over his head. Despite the stuffy heat indoors, he had this aura about him, like he didn't want to be bothered. But something about his isolation mirrored my own, so I slid into the seat across from him. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. He looked up from his food, and I caught a glimpse of his eyes, dark, almost black, like the depths of a well. "You're the new kid," he said, more of a statement than a question. "Yeah, just moved here from California," I replied, a little unsure of what to say next. Liam just nodded, then went back to his food, and for a moment I thought that was it. End of conversation. But then he spoke again, his voice low and almost conspiratorial. "You know about the mountains, right?" I shrugged. "Just that they're old, some of the oldest in the world, I think." Liam smirked, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah, old and strange. There's things in the woods, man. Things that don't belong anywhere." I laughed nervously. "Like what? Bigfoot?" Liam's eyes locked onto mine, and there was something unsettling in his gaze. Not Bigfoot. Worse. The bell rang before I could ask him what he meant, and he slipped out of the cafeteria before I could catch up. The rest of the day I passed in a blur, but Liam's words stuck with me. I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't just messing with me. There was something genuine in the way that he talked about those mountains. After school, I found him waiting by the edge of the parking lot, his hoodie still up despite the afternoon sun finally breaking through the clouds. "Walk with me," he said, not waiting for an answer as he turned and started down a path that led away from the school and into the woods behind it. I hesitated for a moment. I barely knew the guy, but there was something about him that drew me in. So I followed. The trees loomed high above us, their branches intertwining to form a canopy that blocked out most of the sunlight. The further we walked, the darker it got, and soon we were enveloped in shadow. The sounds of the town faded, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of animals. "You ever heard of the Whispering Woods?" Liam asked, breaking the silence. "No," I replied, my voice sounding too loud in the stillness. "They say the woods talk to you," he continued, "that if you listen close enough, you can hear them whispering your name, calling you deeper into the forest." "Sounds like something out of a horror movie," I said, trying to sound casual, but there was a knot forming in my stomach. Liam stopped and turned to face me. "It's real. My brother, he disappeared 2 years ago, right in these woods. We were out exploring, just like this, and then he was gone. No trace, no signs of a struggle, just gone. I didn't know what to say. My throat felt tight, and the air seemed to have gotten even more heavier. "I'm sorry," I managed to mutter. He shrugged, but there was a tightness in his jaw. "They never found him. The cops said he must have run away, but I know better. I've heard them too. The whispers. I think they took him." A chill ran down my spine. "Who?" Liam's eyes darted around the forest, like he was afraid of something, like something was listening. "Not who. What? The forest is alive. There's something ancient in these mountains, something that feeds on people like my brother. Once it has your scent, it doesn't stop until it takes you." I wanted to laugh it off, to tell him he was crazy, but the look in his eyes, the intensity of his voice, made me believe him, or at least made me question what I thought I knew. We walked in silence after that. Every snap of a twig, every rustle in the bushes, making me jump. The sun was settling by the time we got back to the edge of the woods, casting long shadows that stretched out like fingers, trying to pull us back in. "Don't go in there alone," Liam warned as we parted ways. "And if you hear the whispers, don't follow them." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those dark woods, heard the soft rustling of leaves like something was creeping just out of sight. Around midnight, I gave up and decided to go for a walk, hoping the cool night air would clear my head. I wandered through the quiet streets, the town bathed in an eerie light from the full moon. Without realizing it, my feet led me back to the edge of the woods, to the same path Liam and I had taken earlier. I stood there, staring into the darkness, my heart pounding in my chest. Then I heard it, a faint whisper carried on the wind. "Come." I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. The whisper was soft, almost melodic, and I could barely make out the words. But there was no mistaking it. Someone or something was calling me. "Come closer." I took a step back, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But the whisper grew louder, more insistent, like a chorus of voices beckoning me into the shadows. Against every instinct, I found myself stepping forward, drawn to the sound like a moth to a flame. The trees seemed to reach out for me, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes in the moonlight. I could feel the pull of the forest, a magnetic force that tugged at my very soul. "Don't." Liam's voice broke through the fog of fear clouding my mind. I spun around to see him standing at the edge of the clearing, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. "Don't listen to them," he shouted. "They'll take you too." The spell broke, and suddenly I was running, sprinting back toward the town with Liam close behind. The whispers faded, but I could still feel them, lurking just beyond the edge of the trees, waiting for another chance to pull me in. We didn't stop until we were back under the streetlights, panting and drenched in sweat despite the cool night air. "Why did you go back?" Liam demanded, his voice shaking with anger and something else, fear. "I don't know," I admitted. I heard them." He grabbed my arm, his grip tightened enough to hurt. "Promise me you won't go back there. Not alone, not with anyone. Just stay away." I nodded, too shaken to argue, and after a long tense moment, he let go and stepped back. "I'm serious," he said, his voice softening. "You can't mess around with this stuff. The mountains, the woods, they're not like anywhere else. They're old, and they're dangerous." I believe you, I whispered, and I meant it. Liam gave me a long look, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. I stood there for a while, staring at the spot where the woods met the town, the line between safety and whatever lay beyond those trees. I wish I could say that was the end of it, that I took Liam's advice and stayed far away from the whispering woods. But something had changed that night. I could feel it, a connection to the forest that hadn't been there before. It was like a thread, thin but unbreakable, pulling me towards the darkness, no matter how hard I tried to resist. Over the next few weeks, the whisper grew louder, more persistent. I started hearing them in my dreams, calling me back to the woods, promising me things I couldn't quite understand but felt compelled to seek out. The pull became stronger, harder to ignore, and I found myself drawn to the edge of the forest more and more often, staring into the shadows and wondering what lay beyond. Liam noticed, of course. He'd catch me staring out the window during class, or find me lingering near the tree line after school. Each time, he'd pull me back, his eyes filled with the same fear I'd seen the first day. But no matter how hard he tried to keep me away, the call of the forest was too strong.